Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. Merry Christmas. I hope somebody's watching. I know that it gets watched a lot afterwards. And we can never quite figure out, Laurie, this LinkedIn thing in terms of audience and what we post where we're there. Maybe I'll ask you a little bit about that once we get started. I've got my longtime friend, Laurie Orlov, who has done this amazing AI report. I'm going to let you learn more about who she is, if you don't already know, right after this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Laurie, I have known you for, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, 13 years. I've been doing this for about 13 and a half years. I know that the first time we crossed paths was at a Mary Furlong event. Yep. And I was blown away by your wisdom and your insight, and I continue to be blown away by that. And so I'd like to actually start by having you just tell us a little bit about who you are and your passions.
So I'm an industry analyst, is sort of what I am and what I do. I was an industry analyst before I got into this particular topic area of technology for older adults. I worked at Forrester Research for 9 years, and before that I was in IT. But the analyst part started at Forrester, and what I discovered once I was ready to leave Forrester is that this category of technology for older adults did not have an analyst. Mary Furlong actually is the one who told me that. She said, you know, it'd really be good if you decided to become an analyst for the topic of technology for older adults. So I did. I launched a research report at the time called a market overview. I gave my first speech at one of her events. I took on my first client. And so that's what I've been doing now. It's 15 years.
Terrific. And so let's talk a little. So you created this, back in October, you published this report on AI and senior living, which is amazing, which everybody should take a look at. We'll make sure you have links here in the show to be able to, there we go. Jada's got it up already, and we got some links in there for that as well. That's something everybody should be looking at. But what inspired you to take a look at AI and senior living?
Well, I've been marching around the AI topic for 3 years now. I started out, I wrote a report called The Future of AI in Older Adults. Then I wrote a report called The Future of AI in Care Work. And then I wrote this report about the future of AI in senior living and care. And in the other reports, I managed to interview periodically someone from senior living, and then and I talked to somebody from a nursing home, and I said, well, there's a massive opportunity here, maybe a better opportunity here than in home care or even in some other industries, because the motivator for the use of AI for most organizations that adopt it is they don't have enough people to do the work. And if there was ever a problem in the senior living industry and the nursing home industry, is that there aren't enough people to do the work. The recruiting, especially in the past couple of years, recruiting is tough. There are a lot of jobs that pay the same and are less difficult to do. And then I started talking to people about whether anybody was trying to use AI in senior living. And that's when I basically formed an interview list. I have 25 interviewees in this report. And I talked to what I would call some of the first movers. And I talked to people who wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole and said it's not ready for prime time. So both of those types of people are represented in the report. But one of the most interesting interviews I had was, you probably talked to her too, was a young woman who was dealing with a franchised senior living setup of 6, I think, residents per franchised unit. And she read about AI and she said, wow, this is going to save my life. And she started using it for all kinds of things, including transcribing spoken and free-form notes, creating care plans, monitoring health status, communicating with family members, excuse me, So she was doing it for everything. And after I talked to her, I really got inspired, found more people in senior living who were interested, hesitant, trying it, thinking about it. And that's how I formed this report. And if you take a look at it, the quotes with the people, you can see what they thought. They have hope, they have optimism, they have pessimism. And so that's the way it is.
So I'm going to just add so the person you're talking about is Mo Carr. Veronica is how you find her, and you introduced me to her after you told me about her, and I got so excited, and so you introduced me to her, and she's probably doing more comprehensive, more sophisticated things than most enterprise senior living organizations are doing, and she's done it essentially all herself. She is amazing. I actually had her on as a guest on Tuesday or Foresight TV a few months ago. As you know, Laurie, we have the Foresight AI Lab that we announced a few months ago that we were planning on doing in Las Vegas next month. Just in the last few days, and officially this morning, we've notified everybody that we're going to have to change the dates. And so that will be coming. She will be one of the speakers. She's one of the most passionate people about AI that I've ever met, and she's doing some incredible stuff. So absolutely. So when you wrote this report, who's it for? Who's going to get the most benefit? Kind of what, at a high level, what should people be taking away from it?
Well, I wrote the report for senior living executives under the theory that if they didn't already think about this topic, they should think about it. And that would be senior living executives in for-profit, nonprofit senior living companies and nursing homes. And actually, one of the other exciting things I encountered was what people are doing in nursing homes, which I thought was who would have thought this? They are taking data from hospitals. Multiple nursing homes are doing this now. These skilled nursing environments. They're taking data from hospitals about who the hospital wants to discharge to their nursing home. And they're looking at the AI tool is looking at the data and matching it to whether there's openings in the nursing home and whether the profile of the individual being discharged, it matches the profile of the people they can care for in that nursing home. Now, to me, and that's not a person, that used to be done by discharge planners. A hospital discharge planner would call 3 or 4 nursing homes and say, I've got somebody, Mrs. Smith, she's ready to go. By the way, we want to bring her over today. These are her characteristics. Have a nice day. So now they get a data file that's sent out to multiple nursing homes, and the nursing homes are given a certain amount of time to look at it, 30 minutes to an hour. And they're looking at it with AI tools. They are not personally looking at it. And it's matching to the profile of that nursing home as to whether they can handle the arrival of this individual. I would say that was one of the more remarkable things that I discovered in doing the research for this report. But the report reveals many remarkable things, all of which focused on the same issue. There are not enough people to do all the work in senior living and nursing homes today, and there probably isn't going to be, because the workforce to do that work is not keeping pace with the aging of the population.
Yep. And the other thing I would add from my perspective as I look at it, Laurie, and I'm pretty sure you'd agree with this, is the other thing the AI does is there are actually things that it's better. I mean, I think the use case you described of looking at this data from hospitals it's probably more effective than a human being looking at it, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it does a lot of work that is otherwise just drudge work.
Yes. Yes.
So I talked to somebody who will be a speaker at the AI lab who's using it in life enrichment. And I don't think this is somebody probably who is on your radar screen, but you might want to talk to at some point, and I'd be glad to connect you. But what they're doing is one of the non-trivial things that life enrichment directors have to do is they've got to build a movie calendar every month. Mm-hmm. And typically a movie every day, movie every evening. And so they've got to look at what movies they have available, what movies they've watched recently, things like Rotten Tomatoes scores, maturity ratings, all and resident preferences. And that's actually, it can take hours to do that. And this particular individual has set up an algorithm that they can take all the inputs. They can look at last month or last 3 months calendars. They can take resident preferences. They can look at, Rotten Tomato scores and maturity ratings. And in 30 seconds, they've got the calendar put out. And then, of course, still they have to review it and make sure there's nothing stupid. But it goes from hours to moments to do.
Yep. And I think that's where the sweet spot for AI is, when it can take tasks that took hours, that were drudgery type tasks, and also do something that really people hadn't really tried to do particularly effectively. Like that discharge process has been like that forever.
Yep.
And so I have found, actually, when you have a process like that, you're in a skilled nursing environment or a rehab setting, you're eager to see AI help you. You can't get access to it soon enough because your business problem is so bad that you've got to do something.
So the other thing that I'm really interested in, and I'm curious whether you've come across anybody who's actually doing this. To me, it seems like there's a tremendous opportunity to tie AI directly to your electronic health record and use it to flag opportunities to improve care or to notify you if there's a decline that you might not otherwise see. I don't know if anybody's doing that. I'm not sure if any of the EHR tools are really equipped to do that yet.
If they're doing it, I haven't heard about it, and it has to do with HIPAA paranoia. I guess I would call it HIPAA paranoia. Yep. Privacy concerns. But people are experimenting. There are many pilot projects running that they would deny are official or actually occurring in a lot of healthcare organizations to look at the use of AI in healthcare, AI in dealing with medical records. I mean, if you think about it, the medical record data structure, which is actually not always that structured. There's a lot of text in it. One of the things I learned from talking to people is the problem with patient notes that are in medical records is that they are free-form text. And so reading that text is a nightmare, and AI tools can read it in a second, less than a second, and help you figure out what's important. And so healthcare professionals are super interested. They're really waiting for somebody's, I think what's happening right now is the pilot projects are running, and somebody is waiting to say, your liability, if you deploy AI in your facility, we will absolve you of liability if it guesses wrong as to the diagnosis. And you're not going to see that happen anytime soon. So there's no doing a diagnosis with AI. All there is supporting an already existing process that does a diagnosis, backing it up with the use of AI to say, yeah, that sounds right. Or did you think of this? And that's, I think, the way you're going to see it used in the near term, because nobody wants to be sued. But if you think about the history of senior living has always absolved forced incoming residents to sign a form that says, we'll never sue you. Even if you do something terrible with my mother, we're never going to sue you. And of course, people sue anyway. So
that's right. Well, the other, the thing that is so remarkable. So sort of, I got three things. I'm trying to figure out how to put them, organize how I want to do them all and not forget them. So the first thing is that there have been two stories that really fascinate. There was a story done where they gave physicians a series of case studies and asked them to provide diagnosis. I'm sure you must have seen this. And there were three use cases. One was that the physician just looked at it and created a care plan. The second is the physicians were allowed to use AI and create a care plan. And then the third one was AI just did its own thing. And the shocking thing about this was that when AI just did its own thing, it got it right more than either when the physician did it on its own, or the physician even had access to AI because it didn't completely trust the AI. And then by the same token, we actually know that AI does a better job of reading X-rays than radiologists do. Yes. So how do we? And Go ahead. And then I'm going to add my and yet.
Well, the most important thing is that AI is already being used in radiology. We can get over that one. It's already happening. Relax. It's out. It's reading x-rays. Yeah. The other point about it's more accurate in the diagnosis than the doctor was. So the medical industry admits that its error rate is in the 30% range, okay, in hospitals, which is pretty nasty. If you're admitted to a hospital, you really don't want to think about the fact that there's a 30% error rate.
That's right.
All right. And so if there's a way to augment what they decide to do with some tool that will say, did you think of this? We the patient, this is what we want. I just don't know if it'll happen as soon as we like.
Well, the other thing that's sort of on the flip side of this, and I want to talk about the flip side a little bit here. So I was talking to a friend who who's interested in AI, and he had asked his personal physician about using a scribe. And the physician said, yeah, I used a scribe, but it didn't write the way I write in kind of the shorthand I use. And so I found that it was actually taking me more time to take the AI notes and work with those than it was to just do my own notes. Thoughts on that?
I don't think that's the best use of AI. I don't think scribing is where scribing reminds me of, you've hired scribes have been in the healthcare industry forever. The real people who go into the exam room with the doctor and the patient, and they scribble notes, or now they speak into a microphone, or they dictate notes, or the doctor says, make sure you include this, or what have you. This isn't the best use of AI. This is dictation. And dictation has been a tool, has been supported by a wide variety of tools since there was any technology. I don't think that's our future here. Our future is going to be augmenting assessments with information you might not have thought of, which you could determine today by asking, for example, ChatGPT. Sit down with ChatGPT and ask it questions about health conditions you've had in your life, and ask and say, and I was treated with this. Was there another treatment that could have been offered to me that wasn't offered, and what was it? And it's quite conversational. And by the way, it's always going to have more information than you ever had when you were being treated. And the reason for that is because AI tools inherit all of the data of the internet. They don't leave any data out. And so that's why they're so robust. Now, they can also, if you run with the diagnosis it says, and you try to do something with it, that's probably not a good thing. And I don't think people should go into their doctor's office and say, hey, ChatGPT says I have this symptom. What do you think?
Well, I've been under the weather for longer than I should. It's probably just because I'm getting older and my body doesn't heal as fast as it used to. I'm probably in trouble with all the anti-ageism people for saying that, but that's still reality. And so I had some blood tests done, and they showed up about 8:30 in my My Health Online inbox, and I had some values that were a little bit below normal. And of course, I'm immediately looking at this and feeling sort of panicky. So I downloaded PDFs of it, and I put it into ChatGPT and said, tell me what's going on here. And it was very helpful. And it was like, well, it's actually not that big a deal. And it was fine. But it was, so much stuff you can do with this stuff. And it's so simple.
I love the idea of it helping you relax over some information you've been given in healthcare. There should be more of that.
There absolutely should be. Okay. So we've got two people talking here on a live stream, and we're like all sold out, all in for AI. But there are some people out there who think we're crazy.
Right.
And they're worried about it, and they're scared to death. Let's talk a little bit about that side of it.
Well, the biggest problem with the initial sort of year and a half, 2 years that we've had any AI around is the media-fueled hysteria that said basically hallucinations are what you're going to see with AI. It's going to make stuff up. And the New York Times was a sort of the classic example of writing a story about complete nonsense gotten in an AI interaction. Nonsense that what didn't look like nonsense, but in fact, it ultimately turned out to be nonsense. The thing about, so people are smarter than the media. And people will try to do things with AI if they have a chance and they have access. They may tell their friends, oh, I would never touch this stuff. I don't want anything to do with it. But then their adult child says, did you ever try asking ChatGPT a question? And okay, let's try that and see how that works. Or your grandchild is more likely the one who's going to do it. And so people quietly get exposure that is not media fueled hysteria. And I think that's where we are now. That media thing, I think that's over. The other important thing to note is that, and I hate to say this to people because they get depressed, AI is in every technology you are using right now. Every single one. And my favorite example is Word. If anybody ever picks up Microsoft Word and starts typing, you'll notice that Microsoft Word has begun auto-completing words and increasingly phrases because it's seen what you've written before and it says, you probably want to say this. That's AI. Is anybody using Google? Google is now all AI activated. So you do a Google search and you get blah, 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 blah. That is actually very useful stuff, but it is definitely not a one-word answer anymore.
Yeah, so, what Google is doing, right, is wonderful, right? You'll ask it a question, and it used to give you this list of websites that you'd have to go through. And 80% of the time, 90% of the time, it gives you a couple or three paragraphs that answers your question because it did all the AI research for you. So you don't have to waste time doing that. And of course, it has huge implications for SEO and how marketers think about websites and what they put on. But it's really, really fascinating.
And when they give the answer, I just want to say, when they give the answer, they also include a link to the information that you can use. Okay.
Yeah. And they don't always get it right. Actually, I want to do a couple things here. So the first thing is, we talked about your report. How much is it costing people to get this report, by the way?
Nothing. It's free.
Oh, it is. So I just want to say, you guys have got to download this thing. It doesn't cost you a thing.
No.
It's amazing. It's got amazing. What's that?
All my research is free.
Yeah, it's got amazing.
Not my business model to charge for research. My very first report I wrote 15 years ago, somebody said, what are you going to charge for that report? I said, I can't charge anything for that report. It's a new topic. If I charged for it, no one would pay. So my living is made off of client relationships, business relationships, sponsored stuff, that speaking and what have you. It's not from this research.
Yeah, so there's so much valuable stuff in there that will really, really help advance your journey. The other thing that I wanted to add, just touch bases about, and I know you haven't had a chance. You haven't had a chance to dig into it. I haven't looked at it either. But the U.S. House put out a 250-page report on AI. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on on whether we need it, whether it's going to be helpful, what role the government should play in this whole AI game.
Well, first of all, the report is what I would call a day late and a dollar short. So it would have been more useful 2 years ago. On the other hand, the government should get involved in thinking about AI, especially thinking about the abuses of AI that we've all talked about, deep fakes and misuses of information, and providing older adults, especially, with information that is distorted or otherwise not useful to them. So there should be guardrails, which is what the government and everybody is calling them, guardrails on the use, methods for determining whether certain providers are legitimate and other providers of AI tools are not legitimate. I don't know if that'll mean there's just be a market dominated by 3 companies or something like that. That possibly is what could happen. But in the end, if every technology vendor out there is using AI already, and they're not announcing it, there's not a big sign on their website that says AI is used here, there's nothing really the government can do. Time marched on. We moved ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what about those? I mean, what about things like HIPAA? I mean, there's sort of a couple of big issues I see. HIPAA is one of them. The other question that I hear more and more is people saying, "Hey, wait a minute. These large language models are going up and sucking up all my proprietary information, and I should be paid for it, and they're using it for free and delivering it out." What about that stuff?
So many companies, including senior living companies, are using AI tools on only their own information, and they have made their own information unavailable on the internet. So, so it's not broadly broadcast. It can't be part of everybody's ask a question and you get information from senior living organization A or B. You're not going to necessarily get that if those people have protected their data. And they're going to protect their data because the answers they want to give to their constituents is data they vetted and believe is quality data. And ideally in the future, it will be data about their own residents. That's where we're going with this. Data about the residents of my community can be analyzed with AI, and especially in a predictive manner to see whether Mrs. Smith, based on a couple of incidents that she's had, is likely to be, for example, hospitalized for a fall.
Yep. So it sounds like you don't, and it doesn't sound like you're as worried about this as some people are.
No, but I think it's appropriate to be cautious.
Right.
And especially if you are a senior living organization that owns a lot of data, you should be very cautious. Protect your data. Make sure the tools being used at it are protecting the privacy of the residents. You don't want to see Mrs. Smith, who lives down the hall from the office. You don't want to see her data floating around the internet. So that kind of thing.
I want to go. We haven't really spent a lot of time on the creative stuff, and I know it's the creative is kind of where most people are using it right now because it's easy to access and easy to get it to do things. I actually, my personal belief is that's not where the highest and best value of it is at all. But Google now has a video rendering capability, and I just saw this morning that OpenAI ChatGPT, I think yesterday they released it to the paid public, a new video rendering where you can say, create me a scene, and it will actually render that. I haven't played with it yet. I'm hopefully to get to the ChatGPT one today. Any thoughts on video and where that's going to go?
Well, it's an enormous time saver for companies to generate video about a topic without having to film it. It's probably really bad for the video creation industry. At least it will appear to be bad. But the best thing about things that are bad for an industry is the industry needs to learn how to play with the capability and not to avoid it. And so I'd say combining what you can do creatively in whatever your business is to use video with the video that can be generated by AI tools is probably the best strategy. Much better to join them than to avoid them.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There's a big merger that's happening with two huge marketing agencies, and as they're announcing and talking about it, I didn't actually watch the press release, or the news conference. But one of the things that was noted about it was that they talked about not how they were going to fight AI or their own creativity. They just talked about how they're going to use AI to change the world. And so I guess I look at it and I think, and I know that their marketing agencies are really worried that people are going to use AI and dump the agencies. And I guess I look at it differently than that they can use AI to be even better. You remember when the computers first came out? You're almost as old as I am, but you remember when computers came out and we had screens and emails and everybody said it's going to, we won't need paper anymore. And I don't know about you, but I use more paper today than I've ever used.
Yeah. We won't need paper. And then later on, it said we won't use people. We won't there will be no accountants. Nobody will have to do accounting anymore. There will be nobody who has to transcribe any information or data anymore. There'll be no data entry. There'll be no this, no that, no that. None of that ever happened. And I think the most obvious thing in this situation today is that AI tools are there for the taking or the paying, and organizations that have got their hands over their eyes need to basically take a look and cautiously jump in.
So tell me about what the world of senior living with AI deeply integrated into senior living is going to look like 5 years from now.
Well, I think the most important capability that we're going to see within the next 5 years is you're going to see documentation for care plan creation. You're not going to have to type in and create care plans yourself. Chatbots are going to help educate both prospective residents and staff. And if people aren't already trying how to create chatbots, they're already being used for sales and senior living companies. And I think training staff with chatbots. My favorite example given to me is, I don't think it's happened yet, but you're walking down the hall, you're a CNA, you're going to go into a room of Mrs. Smith, and you ask your chatbot something about what Mrs. Smith's symptoms are in terms of wound care. And you will actually use that advice as you walk into the room in order to take a look at her wound. That's a simple example, but that a training chatbot that will help us as we go. I think more and more we're going to have app user interfaces that will have conversational query and suggestions. And those companies that do not implement those in their application software will probably have to get with the program or go away. AI is going to be used in care coordination. For example, all the care isn't always provided by one organization. So how can you collect information about multiple care providers, answer a question that says, Mrs. Smith is going to be discharged, she's going to go to rehab. From rehab, she's going to go to a nursing home. From nursing home, she's going to need home care. From home care, she's going to need transportation to get home. How can you coordinate all that information together without a person sitting there with paper and pen and the phone? The most impressive thing that we're going to get, I think, in the future, though, is the ability to have prediction. When you have a lot of data, what you can do in an intelligent way in the future is use that data to predict an event before it happens. And I know people are talking more and more, this fall statistic that just came out, that falls are worse this year than they were last year. Enough is enough. We need to start using data about the residents and the people who are at risk of falling so that we can, in fact, help them before they fall. So that's, my favorite phrase, one of the people I interviewed referred to the prediction aspects of AI as a smoke detector for your health, which I love. So I think that's important. And the last thing I would say is people are always going to be essential. They're not going to be replaced in any way. Their jobs are going to get better. The drudgery aspects of their jobs will be eliminated over time, and they will be free to do the kind of analysis and decision making that on behalf of, for example, in senior living and nursing homes, that is for the benefit of the residents and families instead of the clerical tasks that have tied them up in the past.
Yeah, that's to me the big win that I see, is that it will free up people to do what people do best. And it's really, I think that and being able to see things that humans can't see, because we've got all this data are the two big wins. It's a really, really exciting time. I was at Nick a few months ago, and I talked to at least one CEO where I asked him about, and I've had some emails saying sort of the same thing, and people say, we're not really paying any attention to AI. We just don't see that it's got much value. And of course, as you said earlier, in fact, they're already using AI, even they don't know it. And I think that it will be a real big differentiator between companies that are super successful and super efficient and are creating great both resident and employee experiences, and ones that are not so good. So I absolutely agree with you. Thank you for spending time with me. Thank you for this report. It's amazing. Everybody should download it. And we are out of time. Please hang on for a minute after we go off the air, though. I forgot to tell you that before we started. And Jada, thank you for doing this in the background.
No problem.